Hey, Pastor Rob here. Just wanted to thank you for checking out our messages online and wanted to encourage you. I pray that your soul is nourished through the hearing of the word. But at the same time, the writer of Hebrews is very clear about not giving up meeting together. Don't give up the larger gathering. As a matter of fact, in the book of Acts, the early church made it a point to meet together almost daily, even breaking bread together, encouraging one another, being in communion with one another to build each other up. And that is vitally important to your spiritual walk. So I pray that you enjoy this message, but at the same time, I pray that you find a great church body to be a part of, whether that be here at the bridge or somewhere else, so that you can be built up as well. Thank you, and God bless.
How many of you, and I expect like show of hands, like level of participation, how many of you would like to be rich? It's not a trick question. All right, I'm seeing a lot of hands, right? Who wouldn't want to be rich? If you were rich, you wouldn't have to worry about all those money problems that, the peasants who aren't rich have to deal with, right? If you were rich, you wouldn't have to worry about bills all the time because you'd have more than enough money to cover your bills. If you were rich, you wouldn't have to worry about a car that's always breaking down on you because you'd be able to afford a nicer, newer car. Who wouldn't want to be rich? Who wouldn't want to be rich? Now, I have some good news for you on this front. You ready for this? All right. If you own a car, let's do another show of hands. How many of you, someone in your family owns a car? All right, I'm seeing a lot of hands. All right, did you know if you own a car, you are automatically richer than half the world? Did you know that? You're wealthier than 50%. And for those of you who don't like math, that's more than 3.5 billion people. You're wealthier than them. 80% of the world lives on less than $10 a day. Not $10 an hour, $10 a day. So if you make more than $10 a day, you are richer than 80% of the world. So I did some research. The median income in Charles City is $45,000 a year. So some of you might make per household. So some of you might make a little more than that. Some of you might make a little less than that. But that's the median income in Charles City. And so if your family makes the median income of $45,000 a year, get this, you are in the richest 0.5% of the global population. You are richer than 99.5% of the world. So by global standards, here's the thing. Most of you are rich. Did you know that? Did you wake up this morning and go, oh man, I'm so glad that I am so rich? Now, how many of you hearing that fixed all your money problems? Anybody? I'm not seeing near as many hands as I saw earlier. So I feel a little cheated. Because just a second ago, you said that you wanted to feel rich, or you wanted to be rich. And I told you are rich, and that didn't fix your problems. What's up with that? I feel a little lied to. Here's the dirty little secret. We don't want to be rich. We want to feel rich. We don't want to be rich. We want to feel rich. And that is a key distinction. And it's actually really, really good news. It's really, because I can't do anything to help you be rich. We would agree, at least here in America, in order to be rich in America, you have to have at least $1 million, right? You probably have to have in the billions or at least hundreds of millions of dollars. But here's the thing, I can't give you $1 million. I can't give you what I don't have. So I can do nothing to help you be rich. However, it's not that we want to be rich, we want to feel rich. And that is very different. And that's a good thing because no matter how much money you make, feeling rich is a whole lot different than being rich. So we're in week 2 of this series we're calling Strapped. We're recognizing that the reality that most of us don't feel rich. Most of us feel like we're trying to stretch every single dollar into enough money to pay all of our bills. That we're trying to stretch pennies into dollars, and we're trying to stretch $1 bills into $100 bills, and we just feel like we don't quite have enough to get by. The reality is that most of us feel strapped. We don't feel rich, we feel strapped. And so this week, we're going to be diving into Luke chapter 16. So if you have a Bible with you or the YouVersion Bible app on your phone, I'd invite you to turn there. If you don't have a Bible with you, now would be a great time. Get on our Wi-Fi and download the YouVersion Bible app on your phone. But if you can't do that, you can grab a black Bible underneath the seat in front of you and use the table of contents. The table of contents is your friend. You have just a minute before I start reading from this passage to look it up, since we don't put the main passage on the screen. So last week, Rob set us up in this series by talking about generosity and the value of generosity and how we are called to live generous lives. And I think that most of us want to be more generous. Like, if I can speak for you for just a second, chances are you would, if I were to sit down in a conversation with you and ask you, do you wish you could give more money away to the church, away to other charitable organizations in our community and around the world? The chances are you would say, yeah, I wish I could do that. But I'm feeling strapped. I'm feeling like I barely have enough money to get by for myself and my family, much less give away to someone else or give away to the church. And so I wish I could be more generous, but I just don't have enough money. But did you know that almost every statistic on the planet says that the wealthier you are, the less you give? Did you know that? That by average, if you were to compare someone who makes $30,000 a year or $30 million a year, if you were to compare the percentages of how much they give, the person who makes less money gives a higher percentage almost every single time. So it's not just that we don't make enough money. I think that there is a deeper issue when it comes to trying to be generous in our lives. So let's take a look at what Jesus has to say about this issue of money, because he had a lot to say on the topic of money. And so this is a particular parable that he shared. A parable is an earthly story with a heavenly meaning. So hear now what Jesus told his disciples. There was a rich man whose manager was accused of wasting his possessions. So he called him in and asked him, "What is this I hear about you? Give an account of your management, because you cannot be manager any longer." The manager said to himself, "What shall I do now? My master is taking away my job. I'm not strong enough to dig, and I'm ashamed to beg. I know what I'll do, so that when I lose my job here, people will welcome me into their houses." So he called in each one of his master's debtors, and he asked the first, "How much do you owe my master?" 800 gallons of olive oil, he replied. The manager told him, "Take your bill, sit down quickly, and make it 400. Then he asked the second, "And how much do you owe?" 1,000 bushels of wheat, he replied, and he told him, "Take your bill and make it 800. The master, get this, the master commended the dishonest manager because he'd acted shrewdly. For the people of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own kind than are the people of light. And I tell you, use your worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves, so that when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings." I'm going to continue in just a second. Let's piece this apart. There's a lot going on in this story, but Jesus tells this story about a wealthy man. Now, in these days, if you were wealthy, most likely because you owned a lot of property, which was rare back then, or you owned a lot of livestock, or you owned some kind of business. And normally, as a wealthy person, you would hire a manager who would not only see to your business holdings, but also would manage your personal wealth as well. And so they kind of pull double duty. And so this wealthy man has this manager who's been using dishonestly the money that he'd been entrusted. Most likely he was stealing it. Or he was just wasting it, or he was doing something he wasn't supposed to be doing. And so the wealthy man approaches him and says, "Here's the deal. you're fired. But he couldn't fire him outright because this wealthy man had no idea about his financial situation. So there was a bit of a lag time where he said, you're fired, but then that manager would have needed to get together receipts and all the bookkeeping and present it to the wealthy man or whoever was replacing him in a way that made sense. So during this lag time, this manager realizes, oh, wait a minute, I'm about to be out of a job. My dirty dealings have finally caught up to me, and I'm about to be out of a job. I don't want to do physical labor. I feel like I'm above that. I don't want to beg. I'm above that. And so I know what I'll do. So he goes to everyone who owes his master money and basically cheats his master out of more money. But in doing so, places these other people who were indebted to his master in his debt. So that when eventually he does lose his job, he'd be able to go to these people and at least be able to stay with them. And he might actually be able to find a job through having done this. And what's crazy about this story is that the wealthy man commends the manager. Why does he commend him? Well, it's because this manager was clearly short-sighted for some time. Like for him to have been squandering the wealthy man's wealth, clearly he thought he was living in a world with no financial consequences. And then he woke up one day and realized, oh geez, I'm gonna be out of a job soon. I need to actually start looking ahead to the future. I need to actually start looking ahead and managing my these finances in a way now that will have a benefit for me in the future. And so he's commended because he switched from short-term thinking to long-term thinking. And then Jesus goes on, and this is really the whole parable comes to the main point right here at the end. And Jesus says this, picking up at verse 10, whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. And whoever is dishonest with little will also be dishonest with much. So if you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? And if you have not been trustworthy with someone else's property, who will give you property of your own? And so the big point Jesus is making here is this, that there may be a spiritual blessing that you're missing out on because you're mismanaging your money. Have you ever thought of that? That your financial mismanagement, because let's be honest, like we all spend money on things that we shouldn't. We all maybe go out and splurge on something we know that we ought not to be. We all mismanage our money from time to time. But have you ever thought about we consider the financial consequences, but have you ever considered the spiritual consequences of financial mismanagement? See, here's the thing I know about us as people. We're really good at compartmentalization. You know what I mean by that? Like I've got my work life over here, and it's separate from my family life over here, and that's different from my hobbies over here, and that's different from my financial life over here, and we pretend that all of these things are separate and distinct, and they don't have an impact on one another. And yet, when we work crazy hours and we never come home because we're always at work, that has an impact on our family, doesn't it? When we've got a hobby that consumes all of our time and we're either at work or doing our hobby, whether it's be like playing video games or watching TV or whatever it is, like that has an impact on our work, and that has an impact on our family. And if you spend a lot of money on it, it might have an impact on your finances. It spills over into other areas of our lives. And our finances are the exact same way. Like one of the top reasons people get divorced is money issues. Our financial life is not separate. It spills over into our family lives. It spills over into our work life. Because if you're not if you feel like you have no money, but you keep having to go back to work day after day after day, you're going to become bitter at work. Because you're like, why am I even coming here? They're not paying me enough. They're not taking care of me. And you become bitter at work. And so the same thing happens when we mismanage our money. It spills over into our spiritual lives as well. And that there may be a spiritual blessing. Let me put this another way. Our financial mismanagement impacts our relationship with God. And that is a sobering thought. So if that's true, I think we need to get a handle on our finances, don't we? Because they're going to just keep spilling over into other areas of our lives unless we get a grip on this thing. So let's talk for just a minute about you and your money. I know I'm not supposed to, I'm a pastor, but I'm going to do it anyway, okay? So let's talk about you and your money. This is something Rob said last week. Here's something I know about you and your money. You are living on a percentage of your income. You are living on I don't know what that percent is, but you are living on a percentage of your income. So I like my graphs, okay? So I made a graph that helps represent what I mean by this. So I hope you don't mind. I took the liberty of putting your income on the screen. You didn't know that I was going to do this when you walked in the door, so I hope this doesn't make you uncomfortable, but I'm going to put your money up on the screen. Are you ready for this? All right, so here's how much money you make. I don't know how much money you make. So I just made a green bar, okay? So this is how much money you make. So this is your income, all right? So I said earlier that you are living on a percentage of your income. So I'm going to make a second red bar, and that red bar is going to represent your expenses. So this is how much money, so green is how much money is coming in, red is how much money is going out. So here is what it looks like when your expenses are 100% of your income. Right? Where your expenses are equal to your income. Now, you know that this is you. You know that this is you when you constantly feel broke. Because as soon as your paycheck comes in, it immediately goes out to pay all of your bills. You finally get paid, and 2 days later, you're right back down to zero in your bank account. You know that this is you because you're constantly afraid of what will happen if something unexpected comes up. What if someone gets sick and has to go to the doctor? What if the car breaks down and I need to get it fixed? What if the water heater breaks and we need to replace it? What happens if something unexpected comes? Because we have no money left over. Everything we have is going right out the door, right? And so if this is you, you definitely don't feel rich, do you? You feel like you're barely getting by. Because every dollar you see, you feel like it's going straight, you're just the middleman. You're just passing it along to somebody else. All right, I've got another graph for you. This is what it looks like when your expenses are greater than 100% of your income, when your expenses exceed your income. Now, there's a difference here, right? So let me highlight that difference. Okay, this is the difference between the two. We have a word in the English language for this difference. Did you know that? Anybody know what that word is? Debt. The word is debt. We have a word, the difference is called debt. And I'm not going to dig into this too much because we're going to be talking about debt later. But if this is you, this means that your credit card balances are increasing, not decreasing. This means that you are spending more money than you're even bringing in. This means, and forgive me for this one, but I feel like somebody needs to hear this. This means that you bought a car that you could not afford with a payment that you can barely afford. This means that your debt is constantly increasing. It means you're in a constant cycle of payments. Minimum payment is your best friend, despite the fact that all of your balances continue to increase. And if this is you, you definitely don't feel rich. You feel buried under a mountain that is only increasing. Let me show you one more graph. This is what it looks like when your expenses are less than 100% of your income. All right, again, there's a difference. Let me highlight that difference. All right, we have a word in the English language for this difference. The difference is called margin. This is what it looks like when you have margin in your finances. It means that while the bulk of your income is going towards things like food and bills and rent and mortgage and all that other stuff that's important and necessary to live on, it means that some of your money is being saved It's going into a savings account. It's not just all going out the door, but you are stockpiling some of your money so that if something happens, if the car breaks down, if the water heater breaks, if somebody has to go to the hospital, you have money saved, and so you don't have to put it on a credit card and wonder where that money is going to come from, but it's going to come out of your savings. And let me tell you, margin is the key to feeling rich. Margin, and that's like, guys, this is such good news. I heard this a number of years ago, and it radically transformed how I thought about my money. Because you do not have to make buku bucks in order to create margin in your life. Like, it doesn't matter if you make $20,000 a year or $100,000 a year, because I know people who make, like, I've heard horror stories of people who make so much money, and yet they are just buried because they cannot get a handle on their spending. And I've heard of people who make practically nothing, but they've created margin for themselves, and they feel pretty good. They feel pretty comfortable. They're like, yeah, I don't make a lot of money, but I'm okay because I have margin in my financial life. So Chelsea and I have kind of ridden this roller coaster for a number of years. So when we first before we even got married, I was a teacher. Teachers don't make a ton of money. All the teachers go, amen, right? And then I decided I wanted to move up financially, and so I became a part-time pastor. So I did that. I was going to school. I was working like 10 hours a week. We'd just gotten married and moved to Indiana. Chelsea was working at Starbucks. I don't know if I need to tell you this, but a part-time pastor's salary and a barista at Starbucks, not a ton of money to work with. All right, so we felt strapped. Right? Like we felt the weight of bills and rent and all this stuff, and there was very, very little, if any. We were those two lines that were right at one another. That was how we started our marriage. And then eventually we moved to Fort Wayne, and Chelsea got this, after a couple of years, Chelsea got this incredible job opportunity to work for a company called Arbormetrics, and her job was basically to do like tree planting work along power lines. Now, this job to us was incredible pay-wise. Like if she'd worked there for an entire year, it probably would have worked out to maybe, I don't know, $50,000, $60,000. But at the time, oh my goodness, you guys, it doubled our budget like in a month. It was incredible. And for the first time in our marriage, we were saving money. It was awesome. Because here's the thing, when she got this incredible job, we didn't go out and buy a car. We didn't go and find a new apartment to live in. We ate out a little more, but all of our expenses stayed about the same. But all of a sudden our income just shot up, and it felt incredible. We were actually able to save money. We had margin in our finances. And it felt really, really good. We were not making tons of money, but we felt rich during that season. Now, here's the downside. Chelsea hated that job. The whole job boiled down to knocking on people's doors, which they love, by the way, and asking permission to cut down their trees, which, again, they loved. And so that was the whole job. It was a miserable job. So when this job opportunity came for us to move to Charles City, it was really easy for her to give up that job. So we moved here, and because we lost that job, we took a pretty substantial pay cut. And so all of a sudden, like, our expenses, they came down a little bit, but our income dropped pretty significantly. And we didn't make up the difference by spending less. We were not disciplined in the first couple years that we were here. Now, fortunately, we'd saved up a good chunk of money, but every single month for the first 2 years that we were here, at the end of the month, I had to drag a little bit from our savings account into our checking account to make up the difference. And then the next month we can. Sometimes it was $50, sometimes it was a couple $100. And every single time I felt that. And every single day during the month I knew, oh man, if we don't get a handle on this, I'm gonna have to pull more money out of savings and into our checking account. And we did it month after month after month. And in that season, we did not feel rich. I felt like we were just bleeding through our savings. Then last summer, I had the opportunity to facilitate a Dave Ramsey class. And if you've never taken Financial Peace University, I would absolutely recommend it. His method is great, but here's the thing. You can go on YouTube and look up his method in a 10-minute video, and that's all it takes. The class is for motivation. Like, you go to that class and he yells at you and you go, yes, okay, I need to make a change. And you it motivates you and you're like, all right, let's go do this. And so I left, we left that and I was like, all right, let's make a budget and let's stick to it. And that's exactly what we did. So we made a budget, we stuck to it. And for the first time since moving here, our income didn't really move a lot, but our expenses dropped. And once again, we had margin. We had margin. And Chelsea's a stay-at-home mom, which is awesome. We do, I feel very blessed to do what I do. We're not making huge dollar amounts. But what we do have is margin in our lives. And that makes things so much better. So much better. And so here's the thing. If it is true that margin is the key to feeling rich, if it is true that Jesus himself says that by mismanaging our finances, we may be missing out on a spiritual blessing, then we better get a grip on our money management. And here's the thing. I am convinced that the only way to manage money well is to budget. I am convinced. If you want to come up to me after the service and you want to argue with this, that's perfectly, I will more than entertain that with you. But here's the thing. I've met very, very few people who became wealthy, not who grew up well, but who became wealthy, who are not incredibly intentional with their finances, who do not pinch pennies and keep an eye on every single dollar that comes in and know exactly where every single dollar is going out. And that's what budgeting is. It's just keeping an eye on your finances. It is managing your finances well. And so I don't know where you're at budget-wise. I don't know if you fall into the camp of maybe I'll start one someday. I don't know if you fall into the camp of I tried that once and it just didn't work for me. Maybe you're an expert budgeter and you should probably be up here teaching this part of the message. I don't know where you fall, but what I've noticed, a trend I've noticed, is especially in people around my age, that we were not taught this. That most of the people my age, our parents did not teach us. Our schools did not teach us how to do this. We did not learn how to budget. We did not learn how to manage our money. I was very fortunate in that my dad taught me good financial management. But I recognize that I'm pretty rare in that. And it's not limited to my generation. I've just noticed a lot of people have difficulty budgeting. So let's talk a little bit about what to budget and how to budget. Because like I said, I'm convinced that this is the way that we manage our money well. So I love this model. It's called Give, Save, Live. Give, Save, Live. Give 10%, save 10%, live on 80%. Like Rob said last week, we don't shackle ourselves religiously to a tithe, but rather that's a starting point for generosity. And so maybe your give is higher than this. I'm going to try and be a little bit transparent about how Chelsea and I do this thing. Our percentage is actually a little bit higher because we give 10% to the church, we give to Paving the Way on top of that, and then we give to Hope for Life Pregnancy Center on top of that. And so our percentage is a little bit higher than 10%. You try and save 10%, right? This is where the margin comes into play. You're setting aside at least 10% of your income for what if something happens. For us, it's actually a little bit higher than 10%. I think ours is a little closer to 15. And then you live on what's left. You live on the remainder. And I recognize that 10, 80 isn't necessarily going to be feasible for everyone. I don't know your financial situation. This is a starting point. This is to get you start thinking. So when you budget, you first budget the 4 walls. If you think, man, some of these are really, really good ideas, I guarantee you they did not come from me. I stole them from Dave Ramsey. So if you want to know more, go listen to him. I stole most of this. I'm going to be honest. So 4 walls. These are your first 4 priorities when it comes to budgeting. The first is food. It's really hard to live if you can't eat. So you got to make a budget for food. And I would recommend separating groceries from restaurants. Because if you're broke and you have no money, you're not eating out a lot and you're trying to buy groceries because groceries are way cheaper than eating out. But you got to make sure that you're putting food on the table. Utilities, got to keep the lights on, got to keep the water running. Then shelter. rent, mortgage, whatever that looks like for you. And then transportation. And this isn't a giant car payment. This is gas and a reasonable beater, if that is your situation, right? This is gas in the tank. Because I recognize that most of us can't walk to work. I'm lucky I can. I live right next door. But many of us, like we might work out of town, or we're driving into Charles City to work. And so like having a reliable car with a tank full of gas is a necessity. So I'm not going to read through these because you guys have eyes and you can read them. But these are general spending in all of these categories. Okay, so as you go home, hopefully, and work on your budget, these are guideposts. Do not have to hold to these religiously, but these are just general. When you look at 1,000 people's spending habits, 1 million people's spending habits, this is generally how things break down in a healthy budget. So let's talk a little bit about how to budget. Like I said, we're gonna get really, really granular right now. Here's the best gift I can give you. It's an app called EveryDollar. It is a free app. You can get it on both Android and iOS. It's from Dave Ramsey. Again, like I said, I'm just stealing all his ideas, okay? So in this app, it'll even ask you, how good are you at budgeting? Because if you're an expert, you can just skip the tutorial. And if you're like, I'm not really sure how math works, it will walk you through, it will hold your hand like you are a kindergartner, all right? Like this app is so helpful. When I was making a budget for the first time, I did it using this app and it was so easy. It was so easy to do. If you aren't an app person and would rather do a paper budget, I've got that for you too. If you go to our website, thebridgechurchcc.com, scroll down and click on the strapped graphic, you will see on the page it takes you to an option to learn more about budgeting and also download a paper budget as well. Budgeting needs to be done monthly before the month begins. Again, Jesus in his parable commended the dishonest manager because he was looking ahead, because he stopped being reactive and started being proactive. You need to plan ahead of time what you're going to be doing with your money. Because otherwise, I guarantee you, you will spend it on the new shiny thing. That's what I do. I'm a spender. I know this about myself. And so if I have not budgeted carefully, I'm like a crow, as soon as I see something shiny, I must have it. And so if you're like that, you got to plan ahead. You are happening to your money. You're not letting your money happen to you. You are managing your money, not letting your money manage you. It must be a zero-based budget. That means all of your income minus your giving, your saving, and your spending equals zero. The way Dave Ramsey puts it, and I love this, is you're giving every dollar a job. You're giving every dollar a job. You're not saying, I've got this thing and I just won't worry. No, you got to give every single dollar a job. It's about discipline. Now, here's the thing. You might be saying, well, as I go through this, what if an unexpected expense comes up? Or what if something changes? Or what if I don't end up getting the money that I thought I was going to? You're going to have to make adjustments. That's a normal part of the budgeting process. You plan ahead. You have your budget done before the month happens, but then you have to make adjustments. You have to make adjustments. So here's the thing. If you're new to budgeting, I'm just going to let you know in a little secret. If you're new to budgeting, okay, I don't know how much you're planning on budgeting for groceries, but you're wrong. You just are. You're wrong. You're probably low. You should probably add about 25% to whatever number you're thinking. But I guarantee you're wrong. You're going to have to make adjustments, especially if this is your first budget ever. You're probably going to have to make a lot of adjustments. And here's the other thing. You got to give it 3 months. So when Chelsea and I started this, we started it kind of early in the month. And like I said, we'd just been bleeding money from our savings up to this point. And that first month, let me tell you, we still kept bleeding money. We tried to buckle down our spending, and I just couldn't quite do it. And we ended up overspending yet again. But by the second month, I was starting to see some of my own habits. I was starting to see where there were some deficiencies in the budget. I started to move things around. I was like, okay, this is making a little more sense. I was still pretty bad at it, but it started to make a little bit more sense. And by the third month, I was actually like, okay, I think this is something I can actually do. You gotta give it some time. It will be so difficult that first month, but you gotta give it at least 3 months. And then here's the thing, you gotta get some accountability. You got to get some accountability to follow your budget. Because like I said, I'm like a crow. I see a shiny thing and I have to have it. And so I need the accountability of my spouse, which leads me to say, if you are married, your accountability has to be your spouse. And your spouse has to be your accountability. If you are not on the same page and the same team with your spouse, you will not be able to meet your financial goals. I guarantee you. Like if one of you is being a stickler for I'm gonna save and I'm gonna simplify and I'm not gonna go out and spend all this, you know what the other person's gonna do if they're not on the same page? They're gonna go spend all that money that you worked so hard to save. You guys have to be on the same team, holding one another accountable. It will not work any other way. And if you're single, find someone, a friend, a family member, find someone who can help hold you accountable to this. Accountability is so incredibly important in this process. All right, let me wrap it up with this. I know that talking about money isn't a fun thing. Some of you are probably going, I don't even want to make a budget because I don't even know, like I don't even want to know what's going on in my finances right now. But here's the reality. Nothing is going to change until you do something about it. Nothing is going to change until you do something about it. And until you get sick of your current situation, you're not going to be willing to change. Like until you go, all of my money is going to Visa and MasterCard and I'm sick of it and I'm ready to make a change, nothing is going to happen. Until you go, all of my money keeps going towards a car payment that I can't afford and you get sick of that, nothing is going to change. Until you get sick of your current situation and go, it's time to do something different. It's time to do something better. Because guys, budgeting is super easy once you get down to it. Like it's just math. They don't even make you do multiplication or division, which is the hard math. It's just addition and subtraction. Like it's budgeting is really not hard. 80% of the work when it comes to budgeting is the behavior change. That's the hard part of following a budget. That's the hard part of financial management. The theory behind it, like if you go online and search Dave Ramsey budgeting, you can spend 20 minutes on YouTube and you will know way more than you ever needed to know about budgeting. But 80% of it, man, is behavior. It's about a change of behavior. And you're not going to be willing to make the change until you get uncomfortable with where you're at. And so I'm going to pray for us here in the closing. And I'm not going to pray for you to figure out budgeting, because that's easy. I'm going to pray for discomfort. Because we got to get a little bit uncomfortable with where we're at if God's going to take us to where he wants to go. We got to get a little bit sick of our finances impacting our family, impacting our work life, and especially impacting our spiritual life. We gotta be uncomfortable with that if we're going to be willing to make a change. So let's pray. Father God, you've given us money to bless us. To in this nation, the things, the experiences we can have, the things that we can buy are absolutely incredible. They're beyond people's wildest dreams even 30 years ago. You've given us money to bless us, but somehow we've taken that, we've turned it into a curse. We've taken that and we've turned it into something that is hurting us. And our financial mismanagement is hurting us, and our inability to spend wisely, our inability to save is hurting us. And God, we confess that to you. We ask for your forgiveness for the ways that we've fallen short of how you want us to spend our money wisely. And Lord, I just pray that you would create in us a discomfort for where we're at. You would create in us a longing to be able to be more generous, if only we could get there. Create in us a discomfort with the ways that we're spending our money, the ways that we're accumulating debt, or the poor decisions that we're making. Make us uncomfortable. And Lord, convict us and encourage us to repent and to make a plan and to stick to it. That we would be able to be generous, that we'd be able to bless others and stop focusing on ourselves so much. And Lord, as we make these changes, Lord, I just pray provision. You've said it in your word that if we are honest with much, or honest with little, then we will be honest with much. But if we are dishonest with little, we will be dishonest with much. And Lord, I pray that as we increase in our good financial stewardship, that you would bless us financially. We pray all this in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ.